Today's been a great day for me. Put out the first song on my new album, Rogue Alien Pet, which you can find all over the place, called Planet Hearse. Brought a whole bunch of new subscribers to the We Watch Anime channel. Welcome everybody who's seeing Manga Monday for the first time. You don't have to watch these episodes in any order, but I have been sequentially talking about certain series, mostly Kagurabachi I cover every week, so you can hear all of my thoughts on that if you continue the series from the beginning. Today is also exciting, though, because I discovered one of those manga that is just for me. That was made so for me, it feels like in another lifetime, I would have been the one who wrote this manga. Sometimes I see an idea that I'm like, I've had ideas exactly like this, but I never figured out how to make them work as a story. And then when I see a story that figures out how, and especially when it's like, ah, man, if I had just thought about it harder, if I had just been a little more creative, but I'm not. I'm not the creative one, and this person is the creator of this manga, which I absolutely loved, called Toys, Harmful but Unprohibited, by Shino Ura, artist I've never heard of who only seems to have a few works so far. This is a single volume collection of four lengthier, they're short stories, but the four of them are long enough to fill up what seems like a 300-page book. So they're on the longer side. But each chapter so far is kind of like a philosophical thought experiment. The first chapter in particular is very comparable to Genkaku Shinju Sodan in that there's an older woman talking to a younger woman, basically explaining a bunch of head trip ideas to her. Except that this particular chapter is about this girl going to a museum of toys which are not banned, but they are not sold anymore because they are weird and like psychologically or philosophically difficult. Basically, for instance, here's a pair of glasses that let you see 0.5 seconds into the future. But most people who put them on, when they start realizing that they're seeing the movement and then therefore doing the movement and then therefore they decide not to move. And so almost everybody just freezes up within like a minute of using these glasses, which I can easily see happening. So there's lots of just these interesting little psychological and philosophical sort of experiments, and the format of the manga gets really crazy in how it explores these experiments. For instance, there's one toy that everyone who sees it perceives it differently, but also when they talk about it, they perceive one another talking about it differently. So one person will say, like, I see a slimy bird, and the other person also, like, is perceiving that they're saying, like, I'm seeing a slimy bird. But from that person's perspective, they're actually saying, I'm seeing a fluffy dog. And you also are corroborating that that's what they're saying. Like, that's the way the toy works. Hopefully that makes sense, how I'm explaining it. Some of these, when it gets into the explanations of how the toys work, get so complicated that it starts requiring, like, graphs and shit to explain what's going on. So this is very high concept. Very, very high concept. Very Rick and Morty. Like the kinds of stuff that would happen, that would get incorporated into a show like that as just like random sci-fi gags. And it all is kind of presented, I wouldn't say it's a comedy. It's more like just like one person be like, hey, let me tell you a bunch of weird shit and fuck up your brain. And then that's what happens. Like as the manga goes on, she reveals like, these toys are basically considered too much for anybody younger than you, a middle schooler. But surely you, a middle schooler, are prepared to deal with all these things that I just told you. And then the girl just goes home and she's like, and I couldn't sleep that night, and maybe I never will again, and it's funny because it gives it like a creepy feeling because you've got the older character basically like warping the mind of this child. But when you think about it, if a middle schooler were to read this manga, essentially that is what would be happening to them by, like, you're basically doing to the reader what experiencing these toys would do to them by explaining to them exactly the experience they'd be having. So, the manga is itself the older woman fucking with your mind, trying to leave you sleepless at night. And if not for the fact that I have already had my sleepless nights thinking about all this shit, it probably would leave me sleepless. Instead, it's more like, acknowledgement. Someone else thinks this way. Chapter 2 was even more my type of thing because I when I was a hikikomori, I got really obsessed with the whole idea of like just being trapped in time, being stuck in a void where you can't interact with anybody. It's just you, and like what will happen to your mind the longer that you're alone? What do you end up creating? What do you end up doing? What are you inspired to do if you spend all your time by yourself with no interaction? And this is a manga about a girl who ends up living for literally millions of years, just like infinite amount of time, and all of the stuff that she comes up with to just do, to pass the time because she's in a frozen, basically like, it's like it feels a little bit like Groundhog's Day at first, in the sense that she's like exploring the world where everyone is trapped in this moment, but instead of it playing out in real time, everyone else is literally just frozen. And so she's interacting with all these frozen people and all this frozen time. There's a part where she spends 100 million years sitting on a bench with a guitar, some bells strapped to her feet, and a fucking kazoo, and learns how to perfectly replicate King Crimson's 21st Century Schizoid Man, but no one's around to listen. This hit me really. I was like, wow, this manga is for me. This is exactly what I was up to in high school, like mentally, where I was at was like this type of story and thinking. And I love how much extrapolation this author goes to. Like, these chapters are long. He doesn't just... Whereas Genkaku Shinju Sodan is like, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea, just like blowing through almost like panel by panel. This manga really sits in it, explores, goes in depth, goes really into the character's psychology and what, everything that she experiences over this time, and the whole portrayal is really interesting. I only read the first 2 out of the 4 chapters of this manga because I want to have more. I want to be able to read more, and I didn't want to be done with it right away. Because I enjoyed it so much. But yeah, I highly recommend Toy is Harmful but Unprohibited, which is the name of both the collection and the first story in the collection. But the whole collection is awesome. Alright, let's talk about the latest Kagurabachi real quick. Chapter 26. We're still very much in the hype build towards the auction. We're setting up that, these guys are going to be involved. They just kind of there for the intro. There's a lot of cool shots of all the characters in a car. I really think the author was like, I just wanted to draw the characters all in a car together, and so did the whole chapter that way, which I kind of appreciate, because you don't see a lot of this in manga, because it's hard to draw cars and like to do all these perspective shots. Probably a good way to get practice at drawing the characters from like a shitload of different angles, like having to turn around to face each other, which might be good for going into whatever they're planning for the next action scene. But yeah, this is very much like an interstitial chapter, mostly explaining why did Chihiro let the sword get taken. Apparently these goldfish, he can like basically imbue spirit energy into his sword, and then the goldfish that come out of the sword, he can have them come out and do reconnaissance for him inside the warehouse, is the plan. Although it may be possible he's being found out. So yeah, that he wasn't sure if it would even work, but obviously it's going to, because otherwise what the hell would be the point of this setup? Yeah, reconnaissance. And they also talk about how there's got to be some kind of insurance deal on this warehouse. Like, there's got to be some reason that they're very confident that, whatever's in the warehouse is safe. So basically, like, if it's safe there, well, sure, let them hold on to it in their own safe, which I think is kind of neat thinking. But anyway, that's it for Kagurabachi. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this. From the same author as Toys Unprohibited, but God, I can't remember the full name of that. Mugen Tengoku. This is a one-shot I highly recommend, about a woman who every 6 months a clone of her randomly generates, And at first, they're just trying to live together, but then she convinces her friend to start killing the clones. And the friend is sort of psychologically tormented by this, but the woman and her clones seem okay with it because they're like making art pieces out of the dead bodies. This manga goes in some fucking weird directions, and I don't want to spoil the ending because it's really good. If you like what you've seen here, very much recommend Mugen Tengoku. This was a pleasant surprise. I've only read the first 2 chapters out of 17. This is still publishing, I think. Devilman versus Hades. This is, if you don't know Devilman and Go Nagai, the author of Devilman, I mean, here's a basic explanation. It was published in 1972. And also, Go Nagai has a series called... He has the Mazinger series and then Great Mazinger, which is like a different version. Basically, all of Go Nagai's manga that he made in the 70s have been like continually reimagined over and over again, usually in just these short serials where it'll either be some kind of sequel or interquel or side story, somewhat canon, but oftentimes combining the characters from different stories that originally had nothing to do with each other to create a shared universe. This manga is a sequel to Devilman, a direct sequel to Devilman, that turns it into, like, the best way I can describe this is it's like when you're watching one of those Marvel sequels where it, like, becomes now canonically part of another movie's universe. This is that for Devilman. So at the end of Devilman, the world ends. There is an apocalypse. Demons overtake the earth. Devilman is killed. But in the Mazinger universe, in the Great Mazinger universe, there is Hades, like the hell from Greek mythology, because the whole Mazinger universe is based in Greek mythology. So the implication of this story essentially is that like Greek hell is like a deeper and more official hell than like surface hell. Like demons are just like lowly, you know, they're just like regular hell. Whereas there's like gods in Greek hell, you know? And so Devilman like raids Greek hell, murders all these, basically pulls God of War. He goes full Kratos and God of War's his way through Greek hell, kills Persephone, fucking kills Death. He's coming for Hades. He wants Hades, and it's all because he wants to get Miki's soul back. He's trying to free her soul back from like the death stream or wherever the souls are collected in the underworld, in hell, in Hades. So in order to get her soul back, he fucking ends up freeing all of the souls, from all of human souls, back to Earth. However, when human souls come back to Earth, which is still apocalypsed, by the way, they all come back as mindless ghouls who are just like eating and raping each other, and like, you know, the Earth is just covered in like zombies now, and Akira is still trying to find Miki while he fights all these other big demons that are after him and shit. This is fucking crazy. It's taken Devilman and the high fantasy sort of background that was at the core of Devilman, brought that to the forefront by combining it with Great Mazinger's high fantasy and you know, its use of different religious iconography, combining it all into one universe. It's extremely comic book. It feels more like a Western comic book than most manga, in not only in that the way the story is, but look at the fucking artwork. Like, it's hyper detailed, just gorgeous, luscious, very high fantasy once again. You know, I would say it's not as expressive as I usually like from manga, but it just looks badass. Like, image for image, it looks awesome. And the story, I mean, this is a viable sequel to Devilman so far. Like, I've read 2 chapters and I'm like, yeah, all right. Like, I can accept this as what would happen next. Do I think, like, Devilman would go free Miki's soul if he realized that this was something he could do? Yeah, probably. I mean, he was on a fucking absolute tear of chaos at the end. So, like, what wouldn't he do? I mean, it seemed like Devilman was unambiguously dead at the end of Devilman. I don't know if this is like his soul went to level 2 hell, but still, like, why is everybody else in the soul stream and he's still alive? I don't really know, but it doesn't matter. It's awesome. It kicks ass. It looks amazing. And it's more Devilman, so I'll be reading more of that. I wanted to touch on one manga that I think somebody had suggested this to me before. And I know I read this entire first chapter a few weeks ago. And I ended up reading the entire first chapter again, spending the whole time being like, oh yeah, I did read this. Well, did I finish the chapter? Oh yeah, I did read this. But did I make it all the way to the... Oh, I did. I do remember this. So this is MamaYuyu. It's a story where basically it's in a fantasy world where, you know, there's a demon lord and a hero that are always just sort of assigned at like a sigil appears on you and you realize you are that. And they had been at war for all these centuries, but they've created peace when the last hero sacrificed himself. And the current hero, he's 18. He was born with the sigil, basically. Or he was like 2 months old when he received the sigil. And he's grown up in a world where a hero is not necessary. Humans and demons get along. And he's like really searching for identity, you know, in the fact that he has this hero sigil. Then a hero ends up showing up from another dimension who's running from his demon lord. His dimension's basically totally fucked. And he's planning to kill the hero of this dimension and take up residence there after dealing with this demon lord. But when our guy sacrifices himself to save that guy, he then re-sacrifices himself to save our guy so he can live in his universe with his demon lord. Oh, I forgot to mention that, like, the demon lord is like his mom. Like, she raised him from childhood. She's basically just presented as like a concerned parent. We haven't really learned anything about her in the first couple chapters. Other than she was the demon lord and she's raising this guy. But, like, mainly this is about him trying to come into his own as a hero. Now, I think the story of this, it's kind of generic, but it's perfectly fine. Character designs are fine. But where this manga, like, feels really weird to me is the paneling. And maybe you've already noticed. Maybe just looking at it you can tell. I mean, the artwork's kind of awkward, too. Like, this walk looks fucked up. His proportions look completely fucked in this panel. So, like, I don't think the artwork is necessarily amazing either. But the paneling is so awkward all the time. There's, like, always too many panels. They're small. They're crowded. They're laid out weird. There's more dialogue, more of it than necessary. Why is there, like this? Look at this. Why is there a split here in this panel? This makes no fucking sense. So yeah, there's just like so much weird paneling, and it gets really distracting to me because I kind of get stopped up and feeling like there's no flow. You know, it feels like kind of a chore to read. The chapters feel longer than they are, and it's also very melodramatic in the writing. Like, there's not really a lot of moments of levity. The main character is very in his head. He's very like trying to figure it out, trying to become like a type of a person. You know, there's just like a lot of serious melodramatic dialogue between these two in the first few chapters, and it just feels really stiff and kind of boring to me. Like, I think there's a lot of potential here. I could totally understand why some people would get into this story. I don't know where it goes. I don't know if it goes in more interesting directions, but the artwork, like, just this paneling is just terrible to me. So that's what's kept me from being able to read this. Just too melodramatic, too cramped. Just, yeah, not my thing. All right, let's blow through a couple other little short things. You were looking, weren't you? This is a cute short where this guy glances over at the waitress. The girlfriend's mad. She's like, you were checking her out, huh? Huh? And he's like, you're right, I was checking you out. And I don't know, it's cute, whatever. I feel like I explained it wrong. Drunk Lady Warrior. There's these comics that I find sometimes where it's like, I guess they're probably web comics. It seems like they're just, each chapter is one page and oftentimes just one image. Usually character driven by like a hot chick who has like a very conceptual character like this one. You know, she's a drunk adventurer for hire. She gets hired. She's drunk. They break her water bottle. She beats their asses. I don't know how long this is gonna go. It's got 7 pages on the site so far. But there you go. Drunk Lady Warrior Belle. I'm sure this appeals to some of you. All right, so that's it for this Manga Monday. Uh, I'm trying to get these episodes shorter. People keep mistaking the show for a podcast. That's not really my intent. It's more of a manga recommendation, review, critique, show. More of like a little mini magazine where we can all visit these manga together. Obviously, I expect you to look at the screen since I do so much visual on this show. So, I don't think of this as a podcast. So let's try to keep it to normal length. All right. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you in the next one. Manga forever.